There he is.
My man.
There he is.
How are you, brother?
You know, doing great and getting better. How are you?
That's the same, man. That's the interesting, beautiful part of this time is that we can hold like the deepest compassion for people who are, having challenges in these times. But personally, just level up in so many different ways. It's been like, that Bruce Lee movie, I think it was Enter the Dragon, where he's in that place where there's just mirrors everywhere.
Yeah.
And it's like there's mirrors on every aspect of our life. And I love that environment. I'm like, oh yeah, let me look at my relationship with myself and with everybody around me and who's important to me and what's important in my life. So
you have to, man. The life can sometimes serve you up a nice plate of reflection. Sometimes you lose your job, you lose a girlfriend, a boyfriend. Sometimes there's a pandemic, but it all has to come back to you. It's for you to be still. Like you started off the conversation, you say you can be super compassionate for people going through it, and you have to be, because ultimately we're one. We're all connected. We all take care of each other. But also, if there's no peace in you, how can you give peace out there to the world? So you have to have that peace and joy and harmony already within you. That's the number one most important thing to cultivate first.
Yep. The greatest act of service is the act of being in service to yourself and like emanating that energy. That's what's going to shift things around you the most and I think that's something that just watching what you've been putting out, like you can drop into one of your videos and just the energy with which you're expressing that and the energy with which you're coming across. The words are great. The words are brilliant. Like that's the craft that you have. And it's one of the crafts that I have, the ability to string these words together. But it's not the words. It's like the essence of the human being behind the words that comes through in the subtext in a language that's translatable to all human beings, no matter which language we're using. Like you could be speaking in tongues and we'd get it. You know what I mean? Because it's like, oh yeah, I feel that.
The energy. It's the energy, bro. It's I tell people all the time, it's where the words come from. And I say what comes from the heart reaches the heart. You can teach a kid, to recite a complex quantum physics equation, but ultimately, unless they're actually coming from a place where they've done the research and study and the discovery on their own, it just doesn't hold that fragrance of authenticity. And that's what I try to do with my content, man, is always come from an authentic place.
The fragrance, the essence. When I was in, I haven't got to talk to you about it, but I spent 6 days in complete darkness, complete isolation, complete silence. And in that moment, what I really missed, it wasn't the sight of things. Like you'd think you'd miss the sight of things because you're in absolute pitch dark. But I didn't miss the sight of things. I missed the essence of things. I didn't miss the sight of people or the sound of people. I missed like the feeling of those things. Like I didn't miss seeing an oak tree, but I missed like feeling an oak tree. I didn't miss like talking to my friends. I missed like feeling my friends.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like that's the thing you end up realizing when you strip these things away is like, what's really important? And it's far beyond what you think the senses are going to perceive of it. Like you miss the thing itself and its essential nature.
Wow. That's beautiful. Where'd you get the idea to do that?
Man, I've been exploring all of these different practices for so long, and I just heard about this one. It's called Darkness Retreat. And, obviously, I think, have you ever done a Vipassana, like a silent meditation?
I haven't, man. I mean, I've done a silent
haven't either.
meditation, not Vipassana, though.
Yeah, not the 10 days. So that's restricting one thing because you're not communicating, right? And I know, and I've thought like, okay, there's virtue in that for sure. But for me, this was like, ooh, this is another level because not only am I going to be silent and I'm not even going to hear any other sounds of anybody, but it's also going to be dark and it's also going to be alone. And I was like, if I'm going to go for it, I might as well go for it.
Wow.
Like I might as well just see how deep that can go. And it would ended up being the most powerful experience of my life, which is not adding anything. It was actually removing things to add, like to add the gnosis, as the Greeks would say, the understanding of myself stripped from everything. So that's what kind of drew me to it. And I'm so glad I did because it changed the trajectory of my life.
Wow. Beautiful. That's amazing. How long was it you said? A week?
6 full days, yeah.
6 days. Okay. Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
And so there was no, so it was just pitch black. So there's like organizations that set these things up.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Cool.
Because it's like a technology, because they have
Right.
like one pinprick of light. Like if you had that one little light in your room, I actually accidentally brought, I had one of my necklaces, I didn't realize had glow in the dark beads on it. And
Mm.
like, so it was, I was out in the sun before I went in, and I'm like trying to get the last bit of sunshine. This is in Germany. I was doing this.
Okay.
And then I put my necklace in the cabinet, and I kind of memorized where everything was. And
Mm.
then my cabinet is glowing. And I'm like, am I hallucinating? Like, what is going on? Then I had to
Wow.
figure out that and it was incredibly distracting just having that little bit of light. And it was like, oh, my necklace glows in the dark.
Huh.
And so I had to put my necklace in two pairs of socks,
That's funny.
so that I could like have the absolute pitch dark experience. And then the way they deliver food in a pitch dark hallway outside your room. They ring a bell, you grab the food. So there's never any break. For 6 days, there wasn't one little pinprick of light that I was able to see.
Wow.
And so that was really
Wow.
powerful, man.
Wow. And at the end, did it just become a normal thing? Like, did you miss seeing, or was it just, did it acclimate to your body so much that it was just the normal way of things?
It's something I never really got used to it, for sure.
Okay. Never. Okay.
But my appreciation, I mean, and I can send you this video when we're offline. I haven't posted it, and someday we'll, put out a video about it. But there's like a ceremonial unblinding process where they have these really good
Mm.
mindfold masks, which block out all the light.
Mm.
And so they brought me downstairs in the mindfold mask, and it was sunset, looking out over this like pastoral landscape. And when I took my eyes off, first you adjust to the light, which is hard. But then when I actually could focus and see things, I just started weeping, because
Mm.
it was not only the beauty of looking at something that I've looked at for my whole life and not
Wow.
seen it, but it
Yeah.
was also the recognition that I've been for 39 years, or well, maybe when I was a kid, I had that awe and appreciation. But for so long, I would just take things for granted.
Huh.
I would take the idea that I could see the world for granted. I could take
Mm.
the idea that I could, go out and travel and walk around outside and like hear
Mm.
birds and all of that. And the sadness and the grief of recognizing that I was never quite present enough to appreciate that fully.
Mm.
It's just this overwhelming catharsis of emotions of like,
Wow.
whoa.
Wow. That's amazing. I love that, man. Yeah, I always say like the truly enlightened being can fall into a deep wonder by looking at a blade of grass, like
Yeah.
the simple beauties. You just fall in love with the mystery behind it all. For me, I've never been a guy who has to go to some far off location and see these beautiful sunsets, stay in a luxury. I never, to simply be in this mystery of presence, of presency, of just being here. Like, you didn't have to be here. And the fact
Yeah.
that we are here, like that the first gratitude, like you can be grateful for things and health, but just existence, this very existence consciousness space is the most magnificent state of mind, state of presence that I think a human being can be in. And it's always here. It's always here.
Because otherwise you're chasing constantly. And I think it was a quote from Proust, like the master doesn't go out to seek new experiences to constantly bring him to, the novelty of something that they can appreciate. Like the master can look at the same thing with fresh eyes every day. Like you could just look at the same thing and come and be like, wow. I've had this sandwich
Mm.
every day for my whole life, and I love this sandwich, or I love this tree, or I love
Yeah.
this person that I'm waking up next
Yeah.
to, and just look at it with those fresh eyes of presence, not carrying the baggage of all of our.
Thing as a child or as a baby opening his eyes for the first time. it's magnificent. And I encourage everybody to come back to this state of presence, because sometimes we say knowledge is power. I see that you got a lot of books behind you, and I got a whole bunch of books. But sometimes knowledge can also be a prison, because it can create filters from the way in which you look at the world. Like if you study trees and you get into dendrochronology and start studying this type, that genus, that species, you no longer see a tree anymore. You see an idea of a tree, and you can't really appreciate the essence anymore.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know what was funny, man, is like, this is kind of a funny story. It's totally a tangent, but so I did a psychedelic called iboga, which comes from Gabon in Africa, and it's through this tradition of medicine people called the Bwiti people,
Okay.
right? And so in this experience, this is the first time I was doing it. This was over 10 years ago, and I didn't really understand what was going to happen to me physiologically. I understood that it was going to be a psychedelic journey, and in this psychedelic journey, the way that the medicine works, it's actually a stimulant medicine, which is unusual. Most of them drop you into kind of lower heart rate and kind of this relaxed state, but it's a stimulant. And the way that stimulants act on the body, so it just has a physiological effect. So I went to go to the bathroom, went to go take a pee, about 5 hours in, and this is an embarrassing story. So I go to take a pee, and my mind was so clear. I could understand things in a radically new way. And I go to take a pee, and I go to grab my dick to take a pee, and I whiffed, and I missed, and I was like, "What happened? What happened?" And my dick had shriveled to the density of Pluto, it had just contracted into my body, and I started to panic, and I was like, "Oh no, what happened?" And I was like, "Okay, get it together. I need to make sure this thing still works." So I grab it, and I'm like, "Okay, think of something that would arouse you, so I can get a little blood flow into this thing, because I don't think this is healthy." So I started to think about a vagina, and I'm like, yeah, that always gets me going. And I thought about a vagina, and then I understood it. I understood the function of how the labia worked, and how the vulva worked, and how the vaginal canal, and how everything worked. And I was like, oh no, this isn't working the way I thought it was going to work. This is not making me aroused. I'm understanding from a scientific perspective about everything. And it's it's exactly what you're saying. Some part of this, just appreciating it for what it is without going into the depth of the scientific knowledge of it. In that one moment, iboga allowed me to look at it like I would look like a scientific anatomical gynecologist would look at the thing. And I was like, oh no, that's not what I was looking for. I just wanted to appreciate this thing. And I was like, I don't know why that came to mind, but it's just one of those things where you can learn too much about something that it actually robs you of just the awe of just receiving it without even understanding it.
That's it, man. That's it. I mean, it's my parents recently got a divorce, right? After 30 something years, which is common, right? That might not be common, but divorce itself is a common thing. And I think one of the most prevalent reasons why people get divorced is because of knowledge. You think you know that person, right? And when you know something, it becomes dead. It's not alive anymore. You don't see that person that changing and growing every day. You feel like you know them, and when you know them, you have put them in this box. And there's no escaping that, but it's the box of your own creation and your own making.
Yeah.
Right? So it's to see to see the world with that beginner's mind, to see your partner with that curious beginner's mind, to just be very childlike. It's so funny, man, how life is really this process of unlearning, right? More than it is learning. Understanding life is really about unlearning so many of the things that they taught us, right? To polish the mirror. Ram Dass, we connected on Ram Dass a while ago, and he's got a book called The Polished Mirror. And it's only until we can polish our own mirrors of ideas, of concepts, of traumas, of all of these things, can we see ourselves clearly, and we see the world clearly, and the flowers and the light shining on the flowers clearly. Only when we polish our own, clean our own windows.
That's it. And that's what you know, the experience that you have when you're around a master. I never got to see Ram Dass in person. I wish I did, you know, because the stories of meeting him in person, you know, gave this kind of, going back to what we originally started with, like the essence of him was something that was really special that people got to witness. And for me, Don Miguel Ruiz was that kind of the master that I was able to be in his presence for a week. And every night after we would do like talks and different things, every night he would drink one glass of wine and look out at the sunset. And the sunset was remarkably similar every night. You know, we were in Mexico, and it was very similar. And the wine was just the house red wine. It was the same wine that but he would sip that wine, and it was, I swear, like someone who had just tasted red wine for the first time in his whole life. And like that thing to me was more important than anything he said the whole week, was just to observe him with that kind of child's mind of like, this glass of wine is amazing. It might be the same glass of wine that I've had every day. It might be the same sunset, but you know, that's, I think, where we're all headed, is to this just simple presence. And all of these different spiritual paths, you know, we've connected on a lot of different books from different masters, but they're all pointing to the same thing. It's just like, be here now, the power of now, like presence, like what can you get from this one moment, you know, discarding all of your past and all of the future thoughts about it.
That's it, man. What advice would you give to somebody, maybe somebody listening here, on how do they get into this present state of awareness amidst the noise of people around them, of TV, of the news, of social media? Would you tell them to go to Germany and do a dark room meditate? Like, what would you say?
I mean, that's helpful, but it doesn't stick. It's just like, it's something that you can use as a lever. Like, you use that as a lever to pry you into that state for a little while. You know, like even a near-death experience that someone could have can make you appreciate life, you know, in a different way. And sometimes it'll last for a while. But I think you have to develop it as a practice. And I think, so it's good to use these tools to like, okay, now I see. And so that you can remember, but you gotta, like, practice makes the master in everything. So how do you like practice presence? Well, I think a lot of it is a choice. Like, can you clear your mind? And I think that's why meditation is so important. Like, clear all your thoughts, clear everything that you have, and get to that place of just experience, just witness, pure witness, as consciousness, not as Aubrey, you know, which has a whole history and a whole identity, but just as the universal witness, the loving witness. You know, that's why Ram Dass calls it loving awareness. Like, I am loving awareness. That was his mantra. Like, he's not Ram Dass, he's just loving awareness. And then at that point, you can practice that, and then just allow yourself to engage and indulge in that. And it also reminds me of another thing that another Zen Buddhist monk taught me as well. My podcast named Shinzen Young. And I was like, what, in all of your, you know, study, like, what is your advice for people to be happy? You know? And he goes, well, it's quite simple, actually. He said, smile, and then see how far that smile goes. You know, he's like, just smile, just look at that tree, be present, smile, and just see how far you can go with it. And use that as like a practice, like reps in the gym. You know?
Wow. I love that.
Yeah, man. Dude, I gotta say, man, that you were, you know, one of the first people that I saw really put out a great, you know, piece about the virus of fear that we're dealing with simultaneously with the virus of, you know, COVID-19. And so well done in that video, but I think so important to recognize that we're not dealing with one virus here. We're dealing with a systemic, ubiquitous virus called fear as well. You know, and you also put out another great, like, pragmatic advice about how to support the immune system, which is a great way to reorient to it. But just acknowledging, like, we got to acknowledge the spectrum here. We can't just focus on one thing and ignore the fact that we're just fucking having fear just infect our system.
Yeah, fear is found where? Mostly in the mind, right? It's a perception, right? And how do we change that perception? we have the power to change that, you know. There's a great story, see if I remember it correctly. There's a man, he walks into a full elevator, crowded. He's in the back. He walks in last to a full elevator, and he pushes his floor. And as he's standing there waiting for the elevator to go up, he keeps getting poked in his back, and he can't turn around because the room is so full. He's like, oh, he keeps poking me, and he's like, okay, when I get out of this elevator, I'm gonna give this person a piece of my mind. He's so angry. So he gets out in rage, right? He's ready. He's all ready. He gets out and he turns around and he sees it's a blind woman with a cane, right? And immediately his anger turns into compassion.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why? Because of a perspective change, right? Mm-hmm. The situation changed, but really it was his perspective. He was always in control. We live our lives and we often think that we are, thermostats, right? Instead of thermometers, right? Or thermometers instead of thermostats, right? We have to be in control of the temperature that when we walk into a room, instead of allowing the temperature to control us. It's so important, perspective. And when we get situations like this, the world is going crazy, we have to always remember it comes back to us, right? And fears is inside of us, right? It's and we have to start with us. Yeah. And don't get me wrong, you know, fear is a survival mechanism that's helped us for millions of years, you know, some say billions of years, right? Evolutionarily speaking, it exists in all species, right? This survival instinct. But now we're at a level where I think our frontal lobes have developed to a place where now we can step back and look at the fear and question it and not allow it to overwhelm us. This is true strength, to be able to step back and go into that witness space that you said, that witness consciousness, and ask yourself, okay, am I watching too much TV these days? Am I scrolling down my news feed these days and feeding myself all of this energy of hatred, of blame, of Trump, of fear? Am I feeding? Because this is food. Yeah. Right? We're taking it in through here and through here. It's all food. So I think it's so important for us to stop, to pause, to put good things into our bodies, into our minds, and realize when it comes to perspective and it comes to emotion, we are in control. We are in control of how we want to see the world. That's the first thing I want to tell people is you have that power of perspective, and it's the greatest power there is.
Yeah, and it's almost like in the natural state where fear developed, it had a very reasonable function, because what we talk about with knowledge, how knowledge isn't always helpful. Like before they even had germ theory, or before they had any of these other things, you weren't constantly worried about some particular thing. You were worried about something when shit happened. Oh, there's a wolf. Okay, we got to handle this wolf. This is a problem. It might eat something that we like, a person or place, or this is an issue, and then at that point fear is helpful, because it'll scuttle all that cortisol into our body, and we'll be ready to run, or we'll be ready to fight, or we'll be ready for that. But there wasn't this ever-present ever-present indoctrination where everywhere we looked there was fear at every corner and lurking on every door handle and lurking in everything. I mean, we're in houses. Most of us are in houses. And I know this is something that even I've engaged in. I'm in my own house. Nobody's gotten coronavirus in my own house. But how many more times am I washing my hands in my own house? Somehow, in some way, even though I'm not even watching the news, fear got to me in a different way, where I'm a little bit more afraid of my own refrigerator door handle. And it's something that because of our knowledge of this, it's created this subtle fear, and that subtle fear is going to then put all that cortisol into our body, which is good for something short term, but terrible for our immune system long term.
That's it, man. That's it. And that's why I put out that video, man, is because fear, that cortisol, it drops our immune system.
Mm-hmm.
And it's so there are also things that I'm not really hearing mainstream media talk about that we can do to boost to raise, to make it strong, right? A lot
Yeah.
of the simple things, right? No blue light after a certain time, getting your sleep, drinking, staying hydrated, getting the certain nutrients into your body, not
Mm-hmm.
exercising strenuously, but moderately. Like these simple things that we can do to get our immune systems back to where they're supposed to be, because most people, unfortunately, especially where, we're from America, we're extremely obese. We're extremely sick. And, it's funny. It's not funny. It's actually sad. I was just watching something on CNN yesterday about how COVID is affecting the Black community more than any other community. Like there are certain states where, African Americans are like 25% of the population, but they're 75% of the deaths and there's so many reasons about that, which we don't have to get into. But one of the main reasons is because it's an epidemic put on top of another epidemic of diabetes, of heart disease, of
Yeah.
bad food, like all of these things. And I think the smartest thing we can do right now is to be with our families, to be still, to be present, and to take care of our health, to take care of our bodies, to come back to
Yeah.
baseline.
And people underestimate the importance of taking care of the body for so many different things. I mean, one of the studies that I did some research on was the study of what happens when you change the diet and the vitamin profile. Like if you give a multivitamin and healthy food to people who've been to juvenile hall, right? So like people who've been to juvie and like committed crimes, like the recidivism rate, the amount of people that go back, the percentage. So they split them up in a randomized trial, split them up in two. And then after a certain group got out, they gave them multivitamins and they helped support their diet. And then the other people they let just go back to their normal diets, which were starved of nutrition, Wonder Bread and whatever else. And the ratio of people who went back into the same kind of antisocial behavior, because they weren't getting the right nutrition, was dramatically higher. Right. So things like even like being a criminal, like that choice may have a lot more to do with like how we're supporting our bodies as well.
Absolutely. I mean, have you ever been hangry? I'm sure everybody in
Yeah.
this, we've been hangry, right? We see how food or lack of food can affect our thinking, right? We're angry. We're like, no, get away from me. It makes a difference. The body and the mind are one. That's the thing. In this Western world, we've separated it, right? Body, mind, but there's not, it's all one holistic system. Dr. Amen has some studies on the brains. He studied the brains, or he referenced this other study of where they looked at the brains of certain criminals, and you could see certain areas of trauma that are actually physically, morphologically in the body, right? You study the chemical profile of certain people who are criminals, and you see they have lower zinc levels. There's a book from Julia Ross called The Mood Cure. Talks all about this. So absolutely, nutritional therapy is huge. We got to take care of ourselves because it's not separate. The mind, the body are one.
Yeah, that's it, man. That's so important it's so important to remember that. And I think also in this time where, the media is just pointing at this one thing, like we also got to look at what the other effects of this pandemic are. Like my sister, who works with adoptive children and works in like childcare and child welfare services, she told me something that just broke my heart, man. She said that child abuse related deaths, mortality is up 400% because of this isolation, right? So, but that's, everybody's just so focused on like, okay, we got to make sure we flatten the curve, like, but in some way we're trading some deaths for other deaths. And I think this holistic perspective of not only our own bodies, how do we support our own bodies, but how do we support like the culture at large, so that we're not just saying, okay, we're only going to think about this one thing. It's this kind of Western medicine symptom mentality, where we're going to focus everything on this one thing to the complete, ignorance of all other aspects. Well, there's some other gnarly that's happening, so we need to be mindful of, and hopefully like, we can all be a part of that, because I don't think politicians tend to lead. I think people lead and politicians respond. So
Yeah.
as we become aware of that and be like, all right, like next time, you know, this next virus or whatever virus comes, like, let's look at this more holistically. Like, how do we support our bodies, but how do we support the society at large? How do we make sure that we're not forcing people to be at home with their abusers and
Mm,
forcing people to really look at this thing from multiple different lenses so that we can do the most good, not
mm,
just get so fear locked and that kind of like in this kind of panic porn mentality where we're just binging on this one thing to the, you know, to the ignorance of everything else.
mm. Man, yeah, you got me at a loss for words, man. That's wow. I mean, that wasn't something I thought about, but it's so true, man, to look at the full picture. I'm sure domestic violence rates have gone up.
Way up, man. Tragically so.
Yeah. So many issues, man. So many issues, so many symptoms. Um, what's the root though? How can we get to what's the root, man? How do we create something, do something, offer a platform or a space to get to the root of these issues? Or what is the root? What do you think the root is of these human issues, right?
I mean, I think
Is it childhood education? It's all of these things, but what's the
I think the root is awareness. The root is awareness that we're worthy of love no matter what, you know, because I think hurt people, you know, ultimately. And then if you're also scared and in danger, that's the way that you're going to look at your neighbor and you're going to think of them as completely different than you because you're worried they're out there to take your thing or they're going to get you sick or they're going to, you know, we have this idea of separation. Um, so I think it's just raising the awareness that we're all from the same substrate, like different facets of the same diamond, and that diamond's name is love. And we're all part of that. And I think if we can really love ourselves, we'll be able to love each other, love our neighbors, and then all of this other races and borders and religions and all this stuff we're fighting and grappling about and like, you know, like that, none of that matters. We're all team people,
mm,
you know, but I think that comes from like a level of consciousness that, you know, that's what I'm dedicating my life to. And I think in many ways, what you've been dedicating your life to is just shifting consciousness, which I think is the wellspring. I think it's the most upstream thing that we can tackle is
yeah.
just this like understanding, because that's going to lead people to be generous and lead people to be charitable and magnanimous and help each other out. And I think that's where we got to go so that we can not look at people as like, oh, that's that person, they deserve it. Like, oh,
Mm,
can I help? You know, like, how
mm,
can I help? And what's
mm.
the best way I can help?
Yeah, I agree. I agree. I think a lot of our um, solutions have been problematic in and of
Yeah,
themselves historically. I believe it is Ram Dass. He said it's foolish, like trying to relieve an itch by scratching the outside of the shoe. We got to get in there. We got to get in here.
in here. Yeah,
All of our problems is human issues. It's consciousness, right? To be able to identify as consciousness, not Aubrey, not Prince, not Black, not what, not, but as consciousness first.
hmm,
That's what they all mean when they say we are one, because
yeah,
we are one, right? We say human being, right?
hmm,
We're a being, this beingness that already is present, beingness, presenceness. It's already here. There's a great story I want to leave you with, man. It's about a guy. He's hammering a nail into his wall, right? He's hammering his nail. And his right hand is holding the hammer. His left is holding the nail. And he hits his hand with the hammer, his left hand with the hammer, right? And he's bleeding. Now, how silly would it be for the left hand to say, I want justice. Give me that hammer. That's not what happens, is it?
yeah,
The right hand immediately goes to comfort, to heal the left. Why? Because it realizes that it is part of one body. And once
yeah,
we realize that we are part of one consciousness, non-separate, non-separation.
yeah. That's it, man. And Ram Dass, you know, that reminds me of something Ram Dass says. There's two ways that you get to that unified consciousness, and there's one that says Tatwamasi, I am that too, and then
Mm,
the other one is Neti Neti, which is I am not that. You know, so either way, either you say like, oh, I am not just Aubrey. I am not just this person of this class of this thing. Or you say, I am that, you know, like I am that too. Either way, it's either radical inclusion or a radical denial of your separateness. But either way, you're going to get to the same thing, which is that you're the same thing. You're either everything or you're nothing. But either way, if you're everything or you're nothing, you're back at the 0 point and you're back at unicity.
Love it.
If you want another awesome video in our Black Excellence series, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.